Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
My mother was always very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. And she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn, and she wasn't even really sure where she was at. It was very unsettling for her.
I felt so much better after my son told me, "Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you, and we'll figure it out."
Hello, I'm Robert Guadarrama. Here is your Spectrum News in 90. Police have arrested at least one person in connection with the overdose death of Friends star Matthew Perry. That's according to law enforcement sources in Los Angeles. An assistant found Perry face down in his hot tub in October last year. He was immediately declared dead by paramedics. An autopsy found a non-lethal amount of ketamine in his bloodstream. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Joe Biden are appearing together this afternoon for a celebration of reducing Medicare drug costs. It's the first event the pair have held together since Biden dropped out of the race for president last month. It's part of Harris's rollout of her economic policies, which she plans to debut tomorrow in North Carolina. Donald Trump's attorneys are asking the judge in his New York hush money case to postpone sentencing until after the presidential election in November. Trump was convicted in May of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. He is currently scheduled to be sentenced on September 18th. Ceasefire negotiations continued in Doha today, aimed at halting the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza and freeing hostages held since October 7th. Officials from the U.S., Qatar, and Egypt met the Israeli delegation for talks. Hamas declined to appear today as the death toll has risen past 40,000. Now a check of your weather on the ones.
Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter. We're getting close to the weekend and we're still dealing with more heat and humidity across the south. Highs are going to be in the 90s to the upper 90s in triple digits from Oklahoma City and to San Antonio. It's been flat out hot all week long across those locations, a little cooler up through the Great Lakes. And as we get into the rest of the day today, especially tonight, we have a risk for some strong to severe thunderstorms to develop, especially in the area in yellow. Going to be happening late tonight. I'll have more details on the potential impacts we could see across this region coming up in 10 minutes on your Weather on the One.
Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Robert Guadarrama. You're watching Spectrum News. We're following several developing stories today, including a very busy day on the campaign trail. But first, we want to get to some breaking news. An arrest in connection with the accidental overdose death of actor Matthew Perry. The Friends star was found face down in a hot tub in October. His autopsy found the amount of ketamine in his blood was in the range used for general anesthesia during surgery. People close to the actor say he was undergoing ketamine infusion therapy, which is often used to treat depression and anxiety. The 54-year-old had struggled with addiction, but was 19 months sober at the time of his death. We will have updates on this breaking story throughout the day on Spectrum News. The White House is taking a victory lap this afternoon after negotiating the most expensive drug prices down for Medicare recipients. To mark the cost cap, Vice President Kamala Harris and President Joe Biden are appearing together for the first time since he dropped out of the race for president. It's part of a wider rollout of Harris's economic plan, which we're set to learn more about tomorrow. Spectrum's Cassie Simeon is in Prince George's County, Maryland, where the president and vice president are speaking this afternoon. Cassie, high costs of food, drugs, and basic necessities have really become a center point of this election. Can you talk about this plan to cut the cost of drugs for Medicare recipients?
Well, cutting the cost of prescription drugs has not only been a focal point of the campaign, but also of the Biden-Harris administration over the last 3.5 years. And really, Medicare can only negotiate these prices due to President Biden's signature on the Inflation Reduction Act. That was 2 years ago. And now they can actually negotiate these prices to help Americans on Medicare see those lower prices when it comes to their prescriptions. So some of those drugs, they announced the agreement. The 10 costliest prescription drugs under Medicare, they will now be at a lower cost, not only saving money for those on Medicare, but taxpayers, Robert. Some of those drugs priced will include treating heart failure, blood clots, diabetes, and more. And while these two will appear together at this event, it is not a campaign event. It is billed as an official White House event. Tomorrow, Vice President Harris will head to Raleigh, North Carolina, and she will have her own event focusing on lowering costs for American citizens.
Right. Cassie, let's talk about that because, as you mentioned, tomorrow the vice president is expected to unveil her economic policy. Do you think she'll be able to separate herself from voters' sentiment surrounding Biden's handling of the economy, which we should add has seen historically low unemployment and massive gains on Wall Street? Will she even want to separate herself from it?
Well, that will be her challenge to decide whether or not how closely she will step in line with the president and his policies. But as you mentioned, we have seen a strong economy under President Biden. But a lot of experts that I've spoken with said most Americans perceive the economy to be in a bad place because they haven't felt the effects at their wallets. They've continued to feel a pinch with high costs of food and drugs, among other things. Tomorrow, the vice president is going to unveil her economic policy proposals focused on lowering those costs, including working towards a ban on price gouging for food and groceries and empowering the FTC and states' attorneys general to investigate companies that break those rules. That's just one policy announcement that we are expecting tomorrow, Robert. We're expecting to hear quite a bit more from the campaign, which they're saying these are going to be day one issues for the vice president.
Absolutely. All right. Spectrum's Cassie Simeon reporting in Maryland. Cassie, thank you. We'll check back with you shortly. Donald Trump is also speaking out about the economy. Our Angie Gonzalez looks at his comments and has a more in-depth look at Harris's economic rollout tomorrow.
When Vice President Kamala Harris holds a campaign event in Raleigh, North Carolina Friday, she's set to focus on her economic priorities for her first 100 days in office if elected. Campaign officials previewing her speech telling media Wednesday she'll call for a first-of-its-kind federal ban on price gouging at the grocery store. The proposal is just one part of a broader effort by the vice president to lower costs for Americans and distinguish her priorities from those of former President Donald Trump.
If you're a billionaire, I mean, Donald Trump is a good deal for you. But if you're an everyday American, that's just trying to make ends meet, put groceries on the table, gas in the car, Kamala Harris is trying to move this country in the right direction.
Trump asserted otherwise during his own economic address Wednesday.
Kamala Harris won't end the economic crisis. She will only make it worse.
While Trump did talk about some of his economic plans for a second term, including his goal of slashing energy costs for Americans, his speech veered off several times into personal attacks on Harris. At one point, the 45th president even questioned whether the economy is something voters really care about.
They say it's the most important subject. I'm not sure it is, but they say it's the most important.
That's not the thinking for Harris's campaign.
She understands that for too many families, prices remain too high, and so wants to make sure that the American people understand the ways in which we can grow our economy.
For all their differences, the candidates do agree on one thing when it comes to boosting the U.S. economy. Both say they want to eliminate federal taxes on workers' tips. In Washington, Angie Gonzalez, Spectrum News.
Attorneys for Donald Trump want to push his hush money sentencing back until after the November election. The judge issued an original date for sentencing in July, but later moved it to September after the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. The current date for Trump's sentencing is set for September 18th. Earlier this year, a jury convicted Trump of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records, all to cover up his payment to an adult film star before the 2016 election. Hurricane Ernesto is now barreling towards Bermuda after knocking out power and water for hundreds of thousands in Puerto Rico. More than 140 flights in and out of the territory were canceled. Officials say they don't know when power will be returned, and all the while, hot and humid conditions are delaying recovery. On the nearby island of St. Croix, an island-wide blackout was reported after at least 6 cell phone towers were knocked offline. When we come back, J.D. Vance defends his running mate's comments about firing striking auto workers. What the Republican VP pick says Trump actually meant.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
Get moving with Spectrum, because Spectrum has made your big move easier than ever. Simply give us a call and we'll transfer your services. Stay connected throughout your move with Spectrum Mobile, and stay entertained with the Spectrum TV app. With our self-install kit, you can be up and running in minutes. It's your move. Let Spectrum make it a little easier. Schedule your move today. Call 877-280-3229 or visit spectrum.com/moving to learn more about moving offers.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories that inspire and news that matters. Streaming live on your smart TV and connected devices, plus on-demand weather forecasts. It's all there as you step outside with the Spectrum News mobile app, keeping you informed and in the know throughout your day. Spectrum News Plus, local stories connecting communities. Exclusively for Spectrum customers. Now available on your favorite devices.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm meteorologist Mel Carpenter with you on this Thursday afternoon. We're getting close to the weekend, and as we get closer to the weekend, we do have a couple rounds of showers and thunderstorms in store for us. So a good tool to have in any event for severe weather is going to be the Spectrum News app. This is a free app that you can download, 24/7 weather coverage, customized weather alerts for your location or even a family member's location so you can notify them when severe weather strikes in their area. Of course, you get the radar with this as well, and if you live in this area in yellow, you're going to want to stay weather aware throughout the evening hours and especially overnight before going to bed. From Chicago to St. Louis, down towards Kansas City, we're under a slight risk for severe weather throughout the day today, and the primary concerns are going to be damaging wind gusts and hail. Although the risk for tornadoes is low, it is not zero, so that cannot be ruled out as well. As we get rolling into the day on Friday, closing out the work week, we're going to see this storm system start to work its way off to the east, the Ohio Valley, down towards the Tennessee Valley under a marginal risk for strong to severe thunderstorms. Main concern with that is going to be damaging wind gusts and heavy rainfall. And speaking of heavy rainfall, it's going to lead to potential flooding across southern Indiana and Illinois and portions of Missouri and Kentucky getting in on the action later tonight as well. So this is the excessive rainfall outlook. We were seeing some flash flood watches yesterday. Wouldn't be surprised to see some more of those issued before the day is over. So here comes our frontal system working its way through the Midwest. This is right around dinner time, and then overnight, right around midnight Central Time, we're seeing more of those downpours firing up, with the main concern being damaging wind gusts and hail with some of those strongest thunderstorms that do develop. The storm system pushes down towards the south and east. Could be a messy commute across southern Indiana into western Kentucky out the door for your Friday morning commute, and then eventually the storm complex begins to work its way to the east coast as we head into Friday night into portions of the weekend, although it's going to be much weaker by the time that happens. So your 3-day forecast heading into the weekend for Louisville, Kentucky, temperatures do cool down by Sunday, but we're going to keep those rain chances in place each day. Now, speaking of the tropics, we do have some activity brewing over there with Hurricane Ernesto. I'll have an update on that coming up in 10 minutes.
vice presidential debate is coming to fruition after all. Tim Walz and J.D. Vance have both agreed to debate on October 1st in New York City. Spectrum's Ruben Jones joins me now from our Washington bureau. Ruben, great to see you. What do we know about this debate and what are you watching for?
Robert, hope you're doing well. Yeah, this debate is now locked in on CBS for October 1st between Walz and J.D. Vance. There was already looking like there would be a debate when Biden was in the race on CBS. Now we are confirmed for these two running mates. This is going to be interesting. These two are both veterans. They are not lifelong politicians, and they're both new to the campaign trail. They were both chosen very late into this election process, so they've only had, in Walz's case, really only a week or a couple weeks to start campaigning with Harris and get around the country. Vance has not had very long either. So we'll see how they do on the debate stage. Walz reportedly had said during the vetting process that he was not a good debater. Robert, the running mate in a presidential race is often sort of the linebacker for a presidential race. But they're also going to be throwing some punches in this debate. Expect them to be swinging against Trump or against Harris. So this could be an interesting debate.
Sure. Let's stay with the Republican ticket, Ruben. J.D. Vance defended Donald Trump's comments about firing striking workers, which is illegal. UAW's president going so far as to call Trump a scab. Where did this come from?
Yeah, look, I mean, not a surprise considering that the UAW has endorsed Kamala Harris. It also had endorsed Joe Biden. But this came after a discussion about government spending in an interview with Trump and Elon Musk, and where Trump had praised Musk for firing workers who went on a strike. It wasn't clear what workers he was specifically referring to, but the UAW contends this could intimidate workers for the Trump campaign or at Tesla who might want to join a union. So it did file unfair labor practice charges against Trump and Musk. The Trump campaign had basically called these allegations frivolous and shameless political stunt. But Robert, this is noteworthy considering that Trump has went after labor unions, union workers significantly during this campaign to try and get him over to his side because organized labor had been so key for Joe Biden winning the presidency, and it's looking like they could line up pretty significantly behind Harris as well.
Right. Now, let's talk about this because Harris reportedly will dip out of the DNC to go to Milwaukee for a rally next week. What does that tell you about the importance of Wisconsin come November, Ruben?
Yeah, keep in mind, Illinois, where the DNC is going to be held, is not a swing state. But just next door, you've got Wisconsin, which is a critical battleground state this time around, where it was key for helping Biden win the presidency, but it did vote for Trump narrowly in 2016. And of course, Milwaukee was where the Republican National Convention is. So, look, this makes a lot of sense, smart-wise, in terms of going to Milwaukee, try and turn out voters there, as the Republicans had energized so many voters when they had the RNC there. It's going to be held reportedly at the same place that the RNC was held. So this could be an interesting development, potentially coming on the day shortly before Barack Obama speaks that night. Robert.
All right, a busy week. Ruben Jones in Washington. Ruben, thank you. Kids across the country are returning to class. Hello, I'm Robert Guadarrama. You're watching Decision 2024 coverage here on Spectrum News. It is 1:47 in Largo, Maryland, where President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are talking about a deal to lower drug prices. This is their first joint speaking appearance since Harris replaced Biden at the top of the ticket. Let's go ahead and take you there live right now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can we please applaud Judy? I love you back. It's good to see so many friends. It is good to see so many friends. And I want to thank you. Thank you. And let's please thank you. I love you back. Thank you. And I know we all thank Judy for sharing her story. I think we all know it takes a very special person who has dedicated over 40 years of their life to do the work that Judy has done as a nurse that work being what? To care about other people in a way that is about lifting them up and caring about their well-being. So, Judy, we thank you so very much for being here today. I want to recognize the incredible Governor Wes Moore. Who's here with Don and his son. And Wes, I'm so thankful to you for all that you do in service to our nation in so many different ways, and your friendship, but in particular, to share such a personal story as you have. And I know it takes a lot out of you to share that story, but to do it in a way that is about lifting up other people and helping, hopefully, others who are not in this room, understanding how real people are impacted every day about this issue and by this issue. Thank you. I want to recognize the people of our administration, including Secretary Becerra, who is here, the bold administrator, Brooks LaSure, who is here, my dear friend and former colleague, Senator Ben Cardin, Representative Barragan, the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and Representative Mfume for all of your years of leadership. And I want to recognize your next United States Senator, Angela Also Brooks. I've worked with her over the years. I'm telling you, Marilyn, you're going to do a great thing when you send her to the United States Senate. And, of course, I could speak all afternoon about the person that I am standing on this stage with. Joe Biden. And he's going to speak in a minute, but there's a lot of love in this room for our president. And I think it's for many, many reasons, including few leaders in our nation have done more on so many issues, including to expand access to affordable health care than Joe Biden. And today we take the next step, thank you, Joe, forward in our fight. Thank you, Joe. 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 So we believe deeply every senior in our nation should be able to live with security, stability, and dignity. And so in the United States of America, no senior should have to choose between either filling their prescription or paying their rent. That's the subject of today. Because we know for far too long, far too many of our seniors have struggled to afford their medication. And as a result, seniors have been forced to spend their time trying to figure out how they are going to be able to fill a prescription like insulin based on the doctor's prescription, which is about saving their life, or whether they'd have to ration their pills to be able to make it stretch through a month. And why, we all know, but let's ask, why are prescription drugs so expensive? I will tell you. Well, one big reason is for years, Big Pharma has often inflated the price of life-saving medications, often charging many times what it would cost to make just to increase their profits. And millions of Americans have suffered as a result. My entire career, I've worked to hold bad actors accountable and lower the cost of prescription drugs. As Attorney General of California, I took on pharmaceutical companies for deceptive marketing and illegally inflating the cost of drugs, and we won billions of dollars. As a United States Senator, I fought to pass laws that would make health care more affordable and accessible for all Americans. And as Vice President, together with Joe Biden, our President, we finally addressed the long-standing issue that for years was one of the biggest challenges on this subject, which was that Medicare was prohibited by law from negotiating lower drug prices. And those costs then got passed on to our seniors, but not anymore. Two years ago, we gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices for the first time in history. And here is why that matters. It is nearly impossible for a patient to negotiate lower prices by themselves. Just think about that. Somebody who needs the medication, who may be suffering from a serious illness, that they would by themselves be able to negotiate against a big drug company to lower their prices is virtually impossible. It's one person against a huge corporation. But Medicare represents more than 65 million people. And so Medicare has collective bargaining power. And now Medicare can use that power to go toe-to-toe with Big Pharma and negotiate lower drug prices. Thank you, Joe. And this is to the benefit of not only tens of millions of people on Medicare, but also millions of Americans on Medicare who have long-term disabilities. And understand, as a result of our negotiations, the government will also pay less than for prescription drugs. And think about what that means in terms of helping taxpayers save money, whether or not they take these medications. So all of this is to say, 2 years ago as Vice President, I was proud to cast the tie-breaking vote that sent the bill that gave Medicare the power to negotiate and let it get to the president's desk, and I was proud when our President Joe Biden signed that bill into law. In the 2 years since, we've been using this new power to lower the price of life-saving medications, and now to announce the result of those negotiations. It is my eternal and great, great, great honor, I have to tell you, to serve with this most extraordinary human being and American and leader, our President, Joe Biden.
Thank you, Kamala. Well, I love you guys, too. I've been waiting for this moment for a long, long time. First time I sponsored a bill to let Medicare negotiate the price of drugs was in 1973 as a freshman senator with a guy named Frank Church from the state of Idaho. Folks, I have an incredible partner. The progress we've made She's going to make one hell of a president. And Judy, thank you for sharing your story. It's a familiar one for far too many Americans. People like my dad used to lay in bed at night when they lost his insurance as the company he worked for, staring at the ceiling, literally. And you've all experienced, you know people who have experienced this, wondering what in God's name happened if my wife gets breast cancer, or if I get sick, or my children get seriously ill. What happens? What in God's name, how can we pay for the drugs, prescription drugs? I'm serious, these are the discussions. You know it. Do we have enough insurance? Can we afford the medical bills? We'll have to sell the house to get a second mortgage. There are discussions that took place in my house and your house. Kamala and I both get it. We know it isn't just about health care. It's about your dignity.